Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
Well, the first time it happened, I had to be hospitalized for mental illness because things were so strange and I was experiencing and learning things that I never knew about. When I got out of the hospital, there was a burn right there in my forehead. About 6 months later, my forehead just started to suck in the skull and form this strange indentation. And then 6 months after that, I'm doing Skype parties during COVID, and this strange glow starts to show up on camera, but never really in real life. And so during COVID, I have a really bad bout with mania. Some really stressful stuff were going on with my family and relationships. And during that bout with mania, I started to be fed all this strange information about 777, 666, circle triangle, Pisces viscus, things I never have Googled, never have read about. Things were just being fed to me from somewhere else. So there's that.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
So mine happened when I was a little bit younger. Every summer, I remember going to Columbia, South Carolina with my mom to visit my great-grandma. And we did it summer after summer after summer, and it was always a really fond memory of mine. And when I was about 12 or 13, it hit August, and there was no talk of a visit to Columbia to see her. And I asked my mom, when are we seeing my great-grandma? And she said, which one? And I said, the one in Columbia, South Carolina. And she said, babe, that grandma died before you were even born. And she showed me pictures, and sure enough, it was the grandma I remember seeing every summer up until that point. And that was pretty wild.
About a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
Okay, so this has happened to me on a few occasions, but the biggest one was 2007. I was into the party scene. I did a lot of coke, a lot of drugs. This one night in particular, I just went crazy with coke. And I didn't feel right. Something felt off. I could feel my heart just pounding, but stopping, and I knew I was going to die. I made it back to my house, and my dad looked at me. He's like, you look like death. I blacked out. And I woke up an hour later to my boyfriend calling me, but it didn't sound like him. And then my dad looked at me, didn't look like him. My mom didn't look like her. No one looked like themselves. Everything just seemed off. And then eventually I had a mental breakdown because I could not stop those thoughts of how fake everything looked and felt. I know derealization is a real thing, but I am thoroughly convinced that I did die and I got sent to a parallel reality since then. It's not a bad reality, but definitely took some getting used to.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
Alright, this is a really long story, but I'm going to try to get it out in 60 seconds. Basically, one afternoon in 2018, it was my senior year of high school, and I took a nap before swim practice. Well, I woke up in my dream, and I just carried on with my life. I went to swim practice, I went to bed the next day, I went to school, I ate in school, I went to the bathroom, I did everything. Like, everything was exactly the same as real life. I didn't even think it was a dream. And then all these things started happening. A couple of my friends broke up, our friend group kind of started to fall apart. I ended up with a different boy than the person I was with in real life. It was just really strange, and it was everything that was going on in the real world, but it was just a little different. Anyway, it got really scary when my whole friend group fell apart and it was this huge mess, and I went to bed in my dream sobbing and crying and begging something for a chance to try again. And then I opened my eyes and woke up, and it was when I went to bed in the first place months ago. I was messed up for days. And then things that happened in my dream happened in real life, so I'm psychic or crazy.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
Okay, so let's see if I can get this out. So about 4 years ago, I had a full-blown spontaneous Kundalini awakening at my friend's house in San Francisco. First, I experienced the most intense in-body and out-of-body orgasm you could ever experience. I was like, my consciousness was in heaven, and I was just crying and downloading all this information. I proceeded to leave my body and stopped breathing for about 15 minutes, came back into my body speaking light languages and dancing. I proceeded to spend about a week. Time didn't exist. People in the third dimension said it was a day and a half. But a week in San Francisco, living in Golden Gate Park, instantly manifesting and meeting crazy witches and warlocks and people who were telling me about what I was going to experience in the next couple of years. When I came back into the third dimension, I came back into my body with my mother and my uncle, and I was speaking in tongues and light language. And my mom's phone actually stopped and interpreted it, and it said, "Love, love, love, listen to the song," which is how I didn't end up in a hospital. Thanks.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
This is going to sound so mad, but 2 days ago I woke up and I wasn't here, as in this universe. So one thing I noticed was the bed. When I woke up, my bed was in a different position and my sister was next to me. And I was like to her, bro, what's going on with the bed? And then she was like, huh? And then my brother came into the room and he was like 1 foot taller. And I was like, why is he so tall? Again, I ignored it. I thought maybe I hadn't noticed. And then this wig I'm wearing was ginger. And I was like, but that's my blonde wig. And they were like, no, you dyed it ginger. I was like, no, I dyed it blonde. They're like, no, you dyed it ginger. And then I was just looking around like, why are there so many minor little inconsistencies? And then, I just noticed, I just realized this isn't where I'm from. I'm trying to explain this to my siblings and they're all looking at me like I'm mad. My brother was way too tall. My bed was in a different position. My hair was a different colour. The recollection of what happened yesterday was different. And I just started praying and then I came back here.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
So there was a point in my TikTok career where I was obsessing over trying to get my blue check mark and become super famous. For a bit, I legit even started having dreams about being famous on this app. They were really vivid dreams and they felt so real. Like sometimes I would have to wake up and actually check my TikTok to make sure that it was a dream. Well, one day something shifts over because I wake up and I have a peripheral, hundreds of comments saying, what happened to your verification? I even have messages from friends like, yo, why are you not verified anymore? And me telling my longtime fans like, yo, I've never been verified. And they're like, what are you talking about? You've been verified since the beginning. It's almost as if I manifested a reality that I was verified, but I never made it to that reality. And literally everybody else did. I have never been verified, and still to this day I get hundreds of comments asking what happened to my verification. It's so weird.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
About 6 years ago, I was working in a psychiatric facility. During an overtime shift, I heard a banging on the wall. I go to check it out, and I see a patient who appears to be agitated. As I'm approaching this patient, another patient comes up from behind me and puts me in a chokehold. We struggled for what seemed like forever. We end up falling to the floor where he continues the chokehold. I eventually get to the point where I couldn't struggle anymore. Next thing I remember is I'm standing up and my coworkers have him in a prone containment. Now there's more to that part of the story, but that's for another time. Since that day, I've noticed some subtle differences in my wife. Like food options, even the way she laughs, just things that I don't remember her doing. We now have a running joke where I say, "You're not the person I married." My theory is, the day that happened, I actually didn't make it.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
So, a few years back, I attempted suicide, and from what I remember, the gun that I stuck in my mouth never went off. This is the bullet that never went off. So ever since waking up from that night, everything seems slightly different. Colors and logos for different companies seem different. I used to think Walmart had a green color scheme when it's actually blue. Taco Bell I used to think was gold and pink, but it's actually yellow and purple. People will add me on social media who claim they've known me my whole life, but I have no idea who they are. I will share stories with my parents or my family members, and they'll claim that they have no idea what I'm talking about or that never happened. Or they'll tell me stories, and I have no recollection of any of these stories ever happening. Sometimes I even hear voices that aren't there, not in a schizophrenic way, but, it's a little unsettling. But I actually think I died that night.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality. I'll go first. This was a few years ago and I was...
Oh boy, do I have a story. It's 2012. I'm in a really high-end restaurant in Los Angeles. It's boutique. It's small. The way the restaurant's set up is that the bathrooms are at the back by the kitchen. So the only way to leave the actual restaurant itself is to go through the entire restaurant. I would have had to pass my seat, etc. So we get there. I have one drink. I need to go pee. I love to pee. The way the bathroom's set up, each stall has that space in the bottom so you can see if someone's using it. I remember walking into the bathroom, putting my purse on the toilet paper holder, and that was it. I came to what I found out was a half hour later, and I was still sitting on the toilet with my underwear on. I hadn't even gone pee. So I do my business, all confused and stuff, and I felt really weird. I come out of the bathroom. Our servers, the manager, my girlfriend, everyone's looking for me. Where were you? Walked into the bathroom. All the stalls were empty. Where did you go? I'm literally I just was in the toilet. No, you were not. I went into the bathroom and went through every toilet stall. It was empty. So I remember sitting back down at the table with my girlfriend, and I'm like, what the actual fuck? She's like, you were gone for over half an hour.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
Okay, so 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm driving to work, I see a dead cat, looks like ours. I pull over, check it, eyes are open, glazed over, lifeless, dry blood everywhere, cat's been dead for hours. Get back in the truck, snap a photo of it, send it to my wife. Cat's dead, she wakes up, wants me to go pick it up, can't just leave it there, so go back down, cat's gone, fresh blood. I get home, I'm talking to her, she's real upset before the kids wake up, and she points. I turn around, and my cat's down with a big gash on its face. We bring it down, get it fixed up. Later that night, I'm staring at the photos, and I thought, something ain't right. And I drove back down to the bus stop, and I took another photo from the same parking stall. There was paint lines, the pavement was different, and the bloodstains were different in my photo that I took in the morning versus the one at night. Since then, new songs released. I know all the words. Actresses that aren't famous, I know them as really famous. We call it the Jackson swap over. That was our cat's name.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
I've been waiting to tell this story. So about 6 years ago, I was in a very bad car accident. I had overcorrected my Land Rover and it flipped. I was ejected through the passenger window and knocked out unconscious. I remember it like slow motion, me coming out from my seat out into the window, super slow. But I woke up and there was this lady with dark brown hair. She told me she was a nurse and that everything was going to be okay. She put gloves on. She held my hand. And she stayed with me until the firemen and the police officers came. The firemen used the jaws of life to release me. Once I was in the ambulance, I had asked the paramedics about the woman, and they said there were the first responders on scene. There was no woman. I'm pretty sure she was my guardian angel. There's more.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
Two separate instances years apart that make me think this reality is a little weird. First one was when I was 17. I went to a cabin with my friends after graduating from high school. On our way up to the cabin, we decided to take the shortest route. And the second that we turned onto that route, my entire body got covered in goosebumps and I started uncontrollably shaking. 5 minutes later, the car falls down a mountain. As we're falling down this mountain, all of a sudden time slows down and stops. While we're in midair, we hang there for who knows how long. As I'm looking around, there's this really loud voice that says, "You're gonna be okay." Then time starts again. We fall the rest of the way down the mountain. Car lands on its side in a river. Boulder had pierced the car. One of my friends fell out of the window. The metal of the car door had wrapped around my body. We all walked away without a scratch. The paramedics were baffled. They told us statistically we should have all died. Life turns back to normal until 8 years later. I accidentally have my first out-of-body experience. It's where I wake up on an asphalt road. Paramedic is standing over me. He tells me I was in a car crash and I'd been dead for 5 minutes.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
My high school bully is dead and you can't convince me otherwise. I know he's dead. He made the local news. Everybody on Facebook was talking about it. And I have a very vivid memory of me speaking to his cousin about it. He's told me, I didn't like the guy so much, but I'm going to the funeral because his little brother is very distraught. Fast forward a few years and I tell my friend, hey, remember this such and such guy? He's dead. Like, isn't that crazy that he's been dead for like 2 or 3 years now? And she says, what are you talking about? He's very much alive. I think I'd remember him if he was alive, though. So she pulls up his Facebook page, and he's been posting on there regularly, just posting random redneck shit. And I can't find a single article of him dying. But I've seen them. I know I've seen them. I'm not crazy.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
Okay. It was 8 years ago, December 21st, 498. Me and my homies were chilling in Santa Fe flipping some dreamers because that's where all the misfits went after the nuke. And all of a sudden there was this loud, low hum coming from inside the earth. And instantly at the same time, an aurora borealis, or like the northern lights, shot across the sky. I instantly looked over at my friends to see if they could see it too, but they were frozen. Everyone around me was just frozen in time. So while terrified, I let out this scream, and then I woke up with a different name, in a different body, with a different family, a different everything. And I was never able to make it back, and so I just learned how to adapt here.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
So when I first met my husband, I was so excited to hear that he didn't have any food allergies or major food aversions because cooking for people is my love language, and I was so excited to have every single ingredient available to me to cook for him. But about 5 years into our relationship, he sees me chopping cilantro for dinner one night and reminds me to leave it on the side because he hates cilantro. Now, at this point, I've been cooking for him for 5 years, and I know I've been putting cilantro in many, many dishes. But he swears that he has the gene that makes cilantro taste like soap, and that he has told me this many times and always asks me to leave it out of his portion. This goes on for 2 years. Every time I cook with cilantro, we have this conversation. He swears he has always hated it. I swear that he never told me prior to this time. But then all of a sudden it was like a switch flipped again. He sees me leaving it out of his portion. He asks me why and has zero recollection of ever telling me that it tastes like soap to him or he doesn't like it. So now our relationship is categorized into two realities, pro cilantro and anti cilantro.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
I've been waiting for this. So last year I lived with my best friend, and she and I would often go on walks around our neighborhood to pass time and to like get out of the house. And we would always take the exact same route through town. At a certain part of our walk, there was a stoplight, and we would always walk on the sidewalk and we would walk past the stoplight to get back into our neighborhood. Well, on this particular walk, we were walking around and all of a sudden we heard a really loud horn, like a really loud person trying to get our attention. So we turned around to look at the car, didn't see anything, and then went and looked forward again to keep walking. But when we looked forward, we realized we were already past the traffic signal when earlier we hadn't walked past it. I was a little tripped out, but I didn't say anything until she said, "This is not where we were." She and I both think that that car that was honking at us in a different reality crashed into us on the sidewalk and we died.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
I'm gonna try to tell this in 60 seconds. Essentially, I have a lot of really crazy lucid dreams. One time we got a couple of layers deep into a dream. So I was dreaming and I knew I was dreaming, but I thought that if I woke up, I was gonna wake up into what was another layer of a dream. Anyways, I got stuck in this deep dream for like a really long time. I could like eat food. I was sent to this therapist because essentially they thought I was crazy in this other world because I thought that I was dreaming. I worked at this store in a mall that I had never heard of, and I told them like the store I worked at in this reality, and they were like, that doesn't exist. Anyways, I was trapped there for months. I had diaries. I could look in the mirror. I would like take showers, go on dates with my boyfriend. I had a whole family. My diary entries were like really interesting because they like went all the way back till I was a kid. And obviously like all the family pictures, like none of it was from this reality, my life. So I was really convinced that I was dreaming and that I might be in a coma. So I would like sit and I would sketch like my boyfriend, my dog, my house. I can still remember what they look like via these sketches that I was doing in my dream. Part 2.
Tell me about a time when you think you shifted into a parallel reality.
I was driving one night in New York on this parkway called the Jackie Robinson. If you're not from New York, Jackie Robinson is one of the dangerous parkways there. First of all, it's made through a cemetery, but it's a snake road. There's so many curves on it. So I'm driving in one night in the rain thinking I'm Rico Suave doing 60 miles per hour on these turns. I spit out like control and boom, hit the freaking cement wall. In the car, I'm like, all right, nothing looks really bad. Take my seatbelt off. I'm facing oncoming traffic and then the blue lights go off. I'm like, seatbelt on real quick. Guy comes up to my window. I'm looking at him like, you're not a cop? He's like, no. I'm like, you're EMT. Oh, what's up, bro? You saw that wicked thing? He then nervously helps me. Puts my front bumper in the backseat of my car and he tells me, go ahead, I'll stop traffic for you. I mean, what are the odds that an EMT was directly behind my car? Undercover EMT car at that. So I turn my car around to leave because he's like, leave before the cops come. I look at my rearview mirror and there's no one there. Not even the crazy part. That same exact night, there was reports of 3 deaths, the same exact parkway. Only 2 of them were confirmed. I don't know, ever since that day, just nothing felt right. Like my family doesn't feel like my family. I feel like I just don't belong here.